Thank you for having us at the i2i conference. We're thrilled to be here today talking about healthy organizations. The first thing I want to do is introduce our team. I've known Tony Zippel for probably more than 20 years now, and he is like you. He has served as a CEO of a number of large mental health centers, and he knows your struggles and brings that practical knowledge to the table. Aaron Black served as a Marine for 21 years. And if you know anything about Marines, they're pretty awesome about getting people moving and in the right place at the right time. And myself, you can read my bio in the program. But I wanted to tell you the real reason I'm here and why I do this is that I have a brother with bipolar disorder, and he's had a pretty rough go of it. And that is a whole story in itself. And I, as a result, have interacted with quite a number of behavioral health care organization staff and clinicians and leaders. And I know there's a tremendous amount of passion in this workforce and so many people who care and want to be able to do more and help. I also know that no one goes into social work to make a lot of money, but we tend to burn people out pretty quickly, particularly around the front lines. And I've interacted with a fair number of tired, stressed out, cranky, and sometimes almost mean clinicians as we've just been trying to get my brother the help that he needs. So I'm going to start off our presentation today just with a quick video. And what you're seeing here is actually the Olympic Games in Tokyo. These are the best people in the world at what they do. They have trained endless hours. They were selected from among the best of the best of the best in their own countries. And there was an Olympic fail. You know, their boat capsized in the middle of the race. And if you know anything about rowing, every person in the boat has a role. They have a job. And they have to do their job, and everybody else has to do their job for this thing to work together. And when it does, it's this fluid, beautiful thing. And that's what we want every organization to be, taking care of all of their people and getting the job done. But as we know right now, things are tough. It's been a tough couple of years and it's not ending. And I've talked to hundreds of CEOs in the past 2 years or more. And we're seeing workforce challenges everywhere, but I don't think we can continue to just blame everything on workforce. We have so many struggles related to getting the right people, hiring, keeping them, onboarding them, how we train them. We have reputational challenges that, you know, we may or may not be seen as good organizations and great service providers in our communities. And when all those other pieces aren't working well, the quality just really suffers. And in our industry, when the quality suffers, people get hurt or are hurt or at least aren't getting helped. So we want to show you some tools to help you be better at who and how you hire and onboard, how to maximize your team's productivity, how to create an environment where we're known as having a reputation for high quality and where people want to stay. I'm not saying that everybody needs to love their job, but hopefully they at least like where they work. And at least we want to make sure that people don't dread coming to work every day. How many times have you felt like this? Like, man, if it wasn't for all these people to deal with, I could really get something done. But every business problem at its root is a people problem. And there are solutions. And when we fail, we just need to recognize them. What happened? Try to fix it if we can, and just get back in the boat and keep on rowing. So what's the difference between a smart and a healthy organization? Smart organizations use data to make decisions. They have clinical workflows. They put together a strategy. They operationalize everything. They think first and they act second. Healthy organizations build strong teams. They have minimal politics. They have healthy conflict. They make sure everybody's pulling in the same direction, and they challenge every single member to be doing the work they're best at the highest level. Organizational health is not fluffy. I am a Kool-Aid drinker of Patrick Lencioni and the Table Group and everything that they have brought to the world. Organizational health is not fluffy. It takes time and effort and commitment and persistence, but it can also be extraordinarily invigorating and exciting. Healthy is the differentiator between being a successful or a struggling organization. It multiplies your resources and assets. Just imagine if you could spend less of your time putting out fires and more time solving the real problems we have in front of us. And everyone says that our people are our most important asset. There's not a single person in this room that wouldn't say that it's really important to them that their people are happy and engaged and productive. But healthy comes in kind of like the fourth in Olympics. It just doesn't hit high enough on the priority list. And it takes real leadership from people like you to step out in front, to be vulnerable, to make your people strategy your highest priority. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to Tony, who's going to tell you a little bit about predictive index, which is one of the real practical, amazingly helpful tools that you can have in your toolbox. And when I first talked to Tony about predictive index, my first question was, were you using this at your last organization? He was like, no, I didn't know about it. I wish I did. And so our joy is to bring this tool to organizations like yours.
Thank you, Kara. And it's so good to be with you today. As Kara mentioned, I've spent most of my career in organizations like yours. The first job I ever had in this business was a live-in staff person in a group home for people with developmental and intellectual disabilities. And I've done just about everything between that and being a CEO. So when I come to a group like this, it really feels like coming home. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. As Kara said, I've done a lot of this in a lot of different ways, and I've always looked for ways that we can do it better. My whole career, like most of yours, has revolved around looking at people who have tremendous challenges and finding ways to help them get their lives back. And that's what we want to talk about today. How can we help build a workforce that does that, that helps the clients that we serve get their lives back? So next slide. The problem, as Kara said, is that we face tremendous challenges as an industry. And so many of those revolve around people challenges that we have, challenges of getting the right people in place, getting them fully engaged and productive, and keeping them on board for a long time. We all face challenges with turnover and engagement. It's a national problem, but it's particularly problematic in the kinds of organizations that we're involved with. This little graphic just gives you a sense of the scale of it from a financial point of view. If you're like a mental health center with a couple hundred staff, 75 of them billing with typical turnover, typical levels of engagement, you're probably leaving $1 million plus on the table every year. We know that turnover costs about 35% of base salary every time you lose someone. We know that people that aren't fully engaged cost about 34% of salary. We all know productivity could be a little bit better. It adds up. And if we had that cash, just think what that would do for us in terms of being able to improve our opportunities to meet mission, to treat our staff a little better, and raise salaries a little bit. It gives us more financial flexibility. So there are cash issues involved in this problem we're talking about, but those translate into real problems with being able to do the best we can as an organization. Next slide. The first start of it is, how do we get the right people in the boat? And a lot of you know Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great, and he talks a lot about the problem of getting the right people on the bus. And we thought we'd spend a little bit of time talking about that and how Predictive Index as a tool set can help you to get the right people on the bus, or in this case, the right people in the shell, rowing the way you need them to be. The next slide. So I don't know whether you've ever had the experience of hiring somebody that you thought was going to be a great bet. You looked at their resume, they had the experience and they had the training, and you did a smiling interview with them over a period of time. And you said, this guy's going to be great. And then 3 months into the job, you wonder where that person you interviewed went. And it's just not working as well as you'd hoped. The challenge with that is that we often hire people based on their briefcases, right? We hire people based on their credentials, their experience, their resume, the interview we might do with them. And that's important. That needs to be in place. But people are so much more than that. People also have underlying behavioral drives. And these behavioral drives say a lot about the kind of place where we're going to be able to do our best work. And they also have certain levels of cognitive ability. Some of us are faster about absorbing information and solving problems. And could you click that again, Kara? Thanks. And so, we need to be able to look not just at what's in the briefcase, but we need to be able to think about what the behavioral underlying drives are that we have and whether they're a fit with the job and whether we're quick enough in problem solving to be able to take this on. And that becomes the whole person. That combination of the resume and the credentials that they have in combination with who they are at their core, their behavioral drives and their cognitive ability, those things combine, and that's the whole person that shows up at work. And when we only look at what we usually look at, the resume, the interviews, the credentials, we don't get the whole person, and we run into challenges with it. Just to give you a way to think about that, you're interviewing for an accountant, right? And if you've got somebody in there who may be really good and do the job, but you need somebody who's very precise, who lives in the details and loves the details, and you hire somebody who behaviorally is a real big picture person and doesn't care about the details that much, no matter what their resume and briefcase look like, they're going to be challenged in that job. So predictive index gives you tools to look at their behavioral drives along with their cognitive ability. Next slide. Predictive index has been around for a long time. It goes back to 1955, and the whole goal of it is to predict job performance independent of those things that we can see in your briefcase, knowledge and skills and ability. It has been used in thousands of organizations globally. There are hundreds of validity studies that demonstrate the power and validity and reliability of being able to use this for these kinds of purposes. And every year there are more than 3 million new people that come into the database for predictive index. So it just keeps getting better in terms of a set of assessments and tools. And so that's what we want to talk about a little bit about how this can help you to get the right people in the boat. So predictive index has 3 core assessments, and they're really easy. They're all cloud-based, easy to use. The first one is a behavioral assessment. And the behavioral assessment lets you create a behavioral profile for a person that you may be interviewing or for somebody that you already have on the job. And behavioral profile, I mean that it looks at 5 dimensions of what makes us tick relative to doing well in a job. It looks at our preference for dominance. How much do we want to be in charge and drive things? It looks at extroversion. Are we kind of a warm, people-oriented person or a little more cool and reserved and analytical? It looks at our level of patience. And do we like to be in a place where there's consistency and stability, or do we love variety and change and we never met a new project that we didn't like? It looks also at what's called formality, which is the degree to which we are comfortable with risk, the degree to which we are comfortable with differences in the environment as opposed to wanting more precision and to move by the rules. And finally, it looks at objectivity and our need to be data-based and objective in our decisions as opposed to intuitive our decisions. If we know these things when we look at somebody that we're trying to hire, it increases our odds of hiring an ideal candidate. It goes up from 14% odds just based on the way we usually do things with a resume and interviews to 38%. So having that kind of behavioral profile, that behavioral assessment really increases our odds of landing somebody who's going to be a great fit and do the work we need them to do. The second assessment is a cognitive assessment. And this is not really a measure of intelligence, although it overlaps with it. Think of it as a measure of problem-solving speed. And there are some jobs that we have where we've got lots of time to kind of figure things out and to learn on the job. Some jobs where things change really fast and we need to change with them. The cognitive assessment lets you predict how quickly people are going to absorb new information and learn and solve problems. If we add that to the behavioral assessment, our odds of hiring an ideal candidate go from 14% to 38% to now 54%. So it's not perfect, but if you're in Las Vegas and you're playing a table where you've got a 14% chance of winning or one where you have a 54% chance of winning, I can tell you which table you're going to be betting big on. So it really improves your batting average and increases your success in getting the right person on the boat who's going to be able to do great work for you. The third assessment in this is called the job assessment. And this is really the secret sauce, because you may understand behavioral profile and you may understand the cognitive ability of the person, but what if you could look at those things against the specific requirements of a job? So this lets you set up in a really quick and easy way a profile for what the ideal person would look like. It tells you what the cognitive ability is that you need and the behavioral drives that you're looking for in being a success on the job. And if you can hire based on that match between cognitive ability, behavioral drives, and what the job really needs, you've got much better odds of landing the right person. You've got much better odds of engaging them and making them a success and do great work for you and higher productivity. And you've got a much better chance of retaining them. And think of those problems that we talked about in the beginning and how many of them this solves for you. It helps you with getting the right people in place and keeping them. And what a difference that makes. Next slide. It even helps you with recruitment. You know, I look at job ads a lot in this business, and I look at job descriptions a lot. And so many of them read like legal documents. Must be able to lift 15 pounds and stand on their feet for 35 minutes. You know, who gets excited about a job like that? What if you could write ad copy and job descriptions that really spoke to the kind of person you're looking for? And the tools that you have in Predictive Index give that to you. In this case, I created a profile for a case manager, and it says I'm looking for somebody like a collaborator or a guardian, and it gives you descriptions of what those are. And it tells you some things they're going to like hearing. They're going to like hearing that they have a consistent workload, that they're a valued member of the team, you know, that they have a stable place where they are, and they're going to have a history of success doing it. You know, it gives you language for the search so you can fill your pipeline as you do recruitment more successfully. And if you could increase your ability to draw resumes in and to get people to apply for jobs, if you got 10% more or 20% more resumes, what a difference that would make. So it helps you recruit people. And then finally, it also helps you to coach people. It helps you to understand what it is that drives people and what they need in order to do well. You can even use this for things like onboarding. I mean, for example, if you're going to be onboarding that accountant that I mentioned before, I'm very precise. I live in the details. I don't want to make mistakes. I don't like to take risks. You want to onboard them in a way that gives them lots of detail, that gives them a whole book of policies and procedures to absorb and memorize, and they're going to love that. They'll figure out the big picture from that. On the other hand, if you hire somebody who doesn't value that kind of stuff, they're more of a big picture person, you really want to onboard them by giving them lots of big picture orientation and then filling in details as you need to. If you approach onboarding and coaching for people in a way that really speaks to them, you increase the odds that they stay. I've seen data that says that millennials, about a third of them are already looking on their smartphones for their next job before they're finished with new employee orientation. That says something about our ability to onboard and engage and coach people in a way that really speaks to their underlying behavioral drives. And Predictive Index gives you the tools for that. Now, Predictive Index isn't the only set of tools, but it's used by a lot of companies. Next slide. Everything from little startups to really big companies, international global companies. It's used by more than 8 or 9,000 companies globally. It's available in dozens of languages and used in all kinds of different industries. And while it's not the only tool set that's out there, some of you may be familiar with Myers-Briggs or DISC or things like that. It is one of the only things out there that's validated time and time again for doing this whole set of tasks, like how do we hire people, how do we engage them, and how do we keep them? So it's a wonderful tool set. I want to turn it over to Erin now to talk about some other tools that enhance our ability to do that.
Thank you, Tony. Brief introduction, as Kara said, I was in the Marine Corps for over 21 and a half years, but that's not the whole story. Rafe is also my brother, which means Kara's my sister. And so he's a big reason I got into behavioral health after my service in the Marine Corps. I've also was exposed to PTSD in the Marine Corps. And since I've retired, I volunteered at a pregnancy care center, and I'm also a foster parent. So I understand behavioral health very personally from those perspectives as well. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm interested. Like Tony said, getting the right behavioral match for a person is key, and keeping them engaged and motivated is really important. He mentioned there are other tools out there, and we're going to introduce you here to the Working Genius, which is one of those. It's about making sure you're getting the right person in the right seat, and the Working Genius is another really good way to do that. This tool was developed by Patrick Lencioni and his team at the Table Group about a little over a year ago now, and they've got thousands and thousands of people who are already using it. It's a little bit more about what gets you motivated and what brings you joy and excitement at your job and wanting to come back for more. As you'll see, there are 6 different we've used this rowing analogy because in a boat, there are very, very specific jobs that each person in the boat is supposed to do. They're very specific to their skills. And if you have the right person in the wrong seat, it's a great way to frustrate and ruin an otherwise qualified employee. It will reduce the cohesion of the team because people are doing things that are just draining them. And most likely, you're not going to be as successful as a team if you don't have people in the right seats. So the Working Genius has 6 different components. You'll see that the 6 geniuses here. There's also 3 phases of work. You'll see that down at the bottom: ideation, activation, and implementation. I won't touch too much on that. I just did want to mention that because you'll see a little bit later why that's important. So the first set of geniuses are the ideation geniuses, so wonder and invention. And you'll see as we go along how each of these play off of each other. So wonder is the person who is always asking questions. Next slide, please. Wonder is the person who is always asking questions. They're pondering the possibilities of all the wonderful things that could go on in the world. And then invention is taking those ideas and then creating a solution for them. Next, please. The one thing about the ideation and wonder genius is that it might be great to be asking lots of questions. If you have wonder and ideation on your team, they're always going to be saying, hey, I have an idea. What do you think about this? That's great. If you don't have wonder and ideation on your team, you may not be taking advantage of unique opportunities. You may spend a lot of your time just getting things done. However, you're frustrated and demoralized with your ability to create new solutions to frequent problems. You find that it's not getting you where you want to go as fast as you would like to get there. So the next set is discernment and galvanizing. Discernment and galvanizing are the activation phase. And this is the most often overlooked phase of any particular activity or task. And one thing I wanted to mention at the beginning is that every job is a 6-letter job and requires each genius to get successfully from the beginning to the end. While each project should start with wonder and end with tenacity, there is, as I mentioned, a lot of interplay between the geniuses, specifically with the ones that neighbor. So wonder to invention, and then in this case now, invention to discernment. So discernment is the natural gift of an intuitively and instinctively evaluating ideas and situations, you just have a gut feel for, yep, that's a good idea. Nope, that is not going to work. And this is not specific to any expertise, and it does not trump any kind of expertise that you may have in your field, whether that's a clinical expertise or an administrative expertise. Those expertises are still very significant, but this is more like, someone comes to ask you an opinion about something. These are the people that folks are always going to ask, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that idea? I have this new client, I want to try this with them. So this is that person, the person that has discernment. And the galvanizer, man, they can rally the troops around an idea, around an action. They have a lot of energy. Kara is the galvanizer. She can sell ice to Eskimos, no kidding. And it's not just about, can you do this and are you good at it? That's not all it's about. It's about, does it bring you joy? Does it keep you motivated? Do you want to keep coming back for more? Do you love it so much you could do it every day and then again the next day and the next day and the next, and just love coming back for more? So it's very different from what you're good at. It's really about what brings you excitement. So if you have discernment and galvanizing, if you have this activation phase, you're able to evaluate ideas, you're able to pursue the best solutions and get people excited about the way forward around the best initiatives. So those inventions that the Wonder and Invention came up with, that's when the discernment's like, yep, that's the one. And then the galvanizer gets them moving around that idea. If you don't have this phase, if you don't have discernment and galvanizing, you're going to fail to identify bad ideas before they're implemented. You're not going to spend enough time refining good ideas. And you're not going to be able to rally the team behind those ideas. So again, it's going to be that constant frustration of going from, hey, I have an idea, and then just executing, but you miss that middle phase where those ideas sort of get processed and refined. And the final stage is implementation. So these are the gifts of enablement and tenacity. Enablers, they naturally get joy from being able to help people. They provide encouragement and assistance. They're always the ones asking, hey, can I help you? And they genuinely, sincerely mean it. They're not, and some people will do this because they're part of a team and they know that's important. But these people, they love helping other people. If that's all they could do every day, they would be extremely happy. And then you have tenacity. These people bring it home. They get the job done. They're going to make sure that the plane gets landed. They're going to make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. They have the natural gift of pushing tasks to completion and achieving results. They're the ones who are going to make sure the clients are reached out to. They're going to make sure that the product is finished, and they're going to stay up all night to do it if they have to. The great thing about this group of people is there is a lot of support to move to the solution or the action. They're moving it from that implementation, or they're moving it to the implementation stage and making sure it's finishing. They hold people accountable to what they set out to do so that you can see the impact to the world. If you're missing one of these geniuses, people fail to help around the most important priorities. You might have gotten people motivated, but if you don't have anyone to help, it's going to fall flat. No one responds to the rally to get the team moving. Jobs aren't completed and people just move on to the next thing without finishing the current initiative. So you might find that you have a lot of projects that are just unfinished, or you got to a point where you're like, whoop, that's not working. But it's because you weren't able to follow through and implement whatever initiative it was. Next, please. It's important to know that each person has two geniuses. Again, these are the things that bring you joy and energy. You're likely good at them, of course, because they do bring you joy and energy, but it's something that you do as a default. You also have two frustrations. These are things that you may be good at, but they really drain you. They bring you no joy whatsoever. You can do it, you can slog through it, but you do not want to come back for more. And then you have two competencies. You might like it and you might be good at it, but you can really only do it for a short time before it really becomes a grind. Think of it like a coffee cup from Starbucks or wherever your favorite coffee place is. You have the cup with the top on it, keeps your coffee hot for a really long time. If you take the cap off the coffee, then it's still warm for a little bit, but sooner there rather than later, it's going to get cold. And if you're dealing in your frustration, you just poke a hole in the bottom of that cup and all the liquid drains out. Next, please. So as I said, you have these three phases: ideation, activation, and implementation. And each team has what's called a widget tally map. Widget is just the acronym for these particular geniuses. And the team tally map, it shows you where your team falls. The green are the geniuses. The red are the frustrations. The competencies aren't listed because if it's not in one or the other, it is a competency. One thing important to note about the tally map is that the leader counts for two. So here, Kara is our leader. She is galvanizing and what is her other one? Enablement, that's right. Galvanizing and enablement are hers. So that counts for two, which means we have a mid-range of galvanizers, but we have a lot of enablement on our team. We only have one person in each section on our team that has wonder and invention. So if we have to do something that requires thinking of lots of ideas, this is going to be great for Zach and Tony, but for the rest of us, particularly those of us down in tenacity, it's going to be a struggle. So it gives you a language to speak around. It gives you a way to target a particular area of work that you may need help in. And it may help identify where some of the gaps are in your organization when you're trying to complete activities or initiate new programs. Next, please. So now that you've got a couple of different tools to your toolbox, now we're going to bring it all together. And for that, I'm going to hand that back to Kara.
Great. Thanks, Erin. And as Erin and Tony both showed and mentioned, I hope we brought you some great tools that you can think about. As we started to get to know Predictive Index in the beginning, I went to my network of behavioral healthcare executives and friends around the country. And to date, I've only found 3 organizations who are using it. So while it's broadly used, and there may very well be others, throughout industry, both big and small companies, this tool, at least itself, has not really entered the behavioral healthcare world much. And there's so much more that we could be showing you. You can only do so much in an hour. And our goal is really to provide a glimpse for you of some of the things that you might be able to do so that you get more of the right people in the right roles, doing the stuff that they're really good at and living in their happy place so that everybody's rowing together. One of the other things that's probably one of my favorite, where I found Patrick Lencioni first, was around the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And he very purposely puts it in the negative, where most of his other stuff is all extraordinarily positively as he starts to term things. But the critical thing, so you have the right people, they're in their role, they're in their happy places. You still need whatever group of people to get together to get the job done. And that there are a core set of things that you really need in order to be able to make sure that you get to the results. You have to start with trust. You have to have a group of people that feel like they can be in each other's presence and they're going to have each other's back. You got to be able to have trust in order to have healthy conflict. So you need people to disagree with each other. And then once a decision is made, you need people who are going to commit to that decision. They're not going to take a step back and say, well, that wasn't my idea and I didn't like it, so I'm not doing it. You need a team to be able to come together and work together regardless of the initiative. And then you also need a team, kind of coming back to the healthy conflict, who's going to hold each other accountable. They're either going to jump in and help, or they're going to offer something, or they're going to say, hey, that's not your thing. You are a box checker. You've got tenacity. Let me take this thing on for you, because I think I can probably help do it. And it'll be easier for me and painful for you. And you need all of these different steps. And again, we could spend a whole day talking about team building and teamwork and communication and clarity. But it really is just about, there are so many of these great tools out there and ways of doing things. I'm sure some of you have read Good to Great from Jim Collins, or Joy by Richard Sheridan. I have a slew of my favorite books that are on our table down in the exhibit hall if you want to come check them out. I know that working for our agencies, working in the behavioral healthcare field can be an amazing job. And it can be so much more fulfilling than working at Chick-fil-A or Amazon. It's not just about how much somebody makes, about finding the right people, getting them to want to stay at their jobs, keeping them. It's not just about money, and people don't leave just because they could make a couple dollars an hour more somewhere else. The question you should be asking in all of your exit interviews is not why people are leaving, but why did they start to look? Because the real reason that people leave is people. It's either people they don't get along with, people they don't like working for. The vast majority of times when you have turnover, it's a people problem. So as I mentioned at the top of the presentation, in order to do all of this, the hard work of healthy organizations, it has to start at the top. It can't be something that it's like, do as I say, not as I do. You have to be bought in. You have to be first in line. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. And it's also amazing when you work with a team and you can step up and put your hand up and say, listen, I am not good at this. And you don't have to feel guilty about it. You understand yourself as a leader and you know what your strengths are. And you can then ask help when you know that you're working in something that just is a real hard thing for you. Healthy organizations is not an easy one-time fix. It's hard. I said to a client recently, you can't just buy a book and tell everybody to read it. This is a process that you have to go through, and you have to take time to get there and know that, you know, you're still going to turn over the boat someday, and you just have to accept it and get back on board. Our goal is to have healthy organizations, reflected better engagement, reduced turnover, higher productivity. I know there are some great organizations doing a lot of this today in this room, but all of us could be doing better. The great thing is you don't have to start from scratch, that there are resources, books, consultants. You just have to make the commitment to being a healthy organization and have to make it a priority and get started. So please let me know how we can be helpful. We'd love feedback on our presentation. If there's anything else that you would like to see or resources, or you just want to know more, please get in touch with us. And it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you today. Thanks, Tony and Aaron.
Good to see everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you coming.